Joe Biden held his first town hall since moving into the White House last night, and it was the neoliberal nightmare, knife in the back that progressives who felt like they had to vote for him to get rid of Trump should have been expecting, except it was a knife in the chest, while he smiled in that decent, folksy way that people seem to love so much. Nobody should be shocked that Biden said that he does not support canceling $50,000 of student loan debt, saying that he doesn't believe that the government should forgive debt of people who went to Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, or Penn. But the truth about college tuition in the U.S. is that private Ivy League schools' average tuition, including room, board, and fees, is as much as $200,000 over 4 years. Tuition for public college can be over $100,000 over 4 years. Nobody is able to work part-time or even full-time to pay their college tuition anymore. And unless you're able to attend an in-state college and pay about $40,000 over 4 years, a college education is going to start you off in the world with lots of debt because of the financial aid most students, even students at those Ivy League schools, receive. And it seems that the return on investment into an Ivy League education isn't as lucrative as it once was, since alumnus from those schools make around about average $120,000 a year after 10 years of graduating from college. Now, the average salary for graduates from public colleges is around $65,000 to $70,000. But of course, this is more than most people without college degrees make in many cases. But for most graduates from any institution, private or public, none of them really make enough money to be able to afford to pay back decades of student loan debt and be able to afford a place to live and feed themselves and save a little money or even have a vacation in a country where the cost of living far outpaces incomes in many locations. So forgiving $50,000 of everyone's student loan debt is literally a drop in the bucket of what college graduates across the board owe. And using the claim that students from Ivy League schools should be excluded from that relief to not give anyone any relief is really just stingy. And are you surprised that Biden said that raising the minimum wage has to be done gradually? Because you shouldn't be. Working people living in poverty are going to stay there because the Biden administration isn't going to do anything right now to address their poverty wages. If they're still alive and working 5 years from now, there might be a federally mandated $15 an hour minimum wage. But Biden is not fitting to risk making the business community mad by ensuring that their workers need less public assistance to survive, because it's all about the business and not about the workers who are supposed to be, quote, essential, unquote, who are mostly Black, brown people and women, mind you, who already work for poverty wages, but who are keeping these businesses successful. And then there was the comment he made about not defunding the police. Actually, it was Danny Evans, a pastor and member of the Wisconsin Racial Disparity Task Force, who asked Biden, quote, how can we be sure that we don't over-legislate police officers so they can do their job to protect the law-abiding citizens who live in these high-crime neighborhoods and yet train officers to police with compassion, end quote. And of course, Biden's response was by, number one, not defunding the police, which is bad enough. But really, I'm stuck on this pastor asking this question, because this is the other problem we face in our communities right now. This idea that we are being mean to the police, and it's our overzealous efforts at over-legislating them that's going to cause problems. This idea, of course, is prevalent in this whole Blue Lives Matter movement that was a racist response to Black Lives Matter, which was a response to continued racist police violence in this country. But the question, this particular question, was posed by a Black man. And we have really got to get our history right so we can stop taking these dangerous neoliberal positions that play right into the hands of politicians like Biden, who will do nothing to address the issues we're dying over and have been fighting for decades, centuries, really. But today in particular, this question from this pastor really gets under my skin. Because one of the very first things that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense organized to do was to pursue justice for the family of Denzel Dowell. I thought I was just going to talk about Huey P. Newton, who was born on this day in 1942 and who co-founded the party with Bobby Seale in Oakland, California in 1966. But the first organizing campaign of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense is important in this fight against racist police terrorism that we're still in today, because Denzel was a victim of that same racist police terrorism. Dowell was murdered by North Richmond, California cops in what the cops claimed was an attempted robbery, but there was no indication that the store he was accused of trying to rob was broken into. He was physically unable to have run away and scaled fences as the cops claimed he had, and Dowell was killed by a shotgun blast to the back of his head, and an autopsy indicated that his hands were likely raised when he was shot. The very first organizing effort of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was a street rally to protest against police brutality in response to Denzel Dowell's murder. The very first issue of the Black Panther newspaper featured the main story, "Why was Denzel Dowell killed?" But Newton, Seale, and the Panthers didn't just protest and publish an article. They also conducted their own investigation into Dowell's death and established evidence refuting the cops' claims. They confronted police who were harassing Dowell's family. They helped mothers in the community organize against abuse at the local school. They organized armed street rallies that led to the growth of the party. The cops who murdered Dowell were never brought to justice, but this is why we continue on with this fight against racist police terrorism, because the cops who carry it out are rarely, if ever, brought to justice, and every demand that we have made for their accountability is seen as excessive or overbearing or unreasonable. But how can we continue to have this idea that we could ever over-legislate a police force that has been getting away with murder, quite literally, for decades, when we see that they are still getting away with murder, especially when the incident that sparked Huey Newton and Bobby Seale to establish the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense sounds eerily similar to so many incidents of police violence against our people that we're still protesting today. See, this is why this history is so important, because it ought to inform our response to these same issues. Of course, Biden isn't going to just agree that defunding the police needs to be done, or that community control over the police is where we need to be. And too many people in our communities won't support those things either, like that pastor who asked the question, doesn't, believing that we're being unreasonable in our demands for justice against an oppressive and tyrannical police force. But my question is, what are we going to do? Because we have the blueprint. Huey P. Newton gave it to us. Follow Luke Mon Nation on patreon.com/LukeMonNation for lots of great content.